Before you go any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Because once you hear this story, you'll need to know what comes next. Perugia, Italy, a medieval town wrapped in mist and history. Cobblestone streets, ancient arches, the smell of espresso drifting from corner cafes. It was the perfect postcard of European calm. But on November 2, 2007, that peace shattered when a young British exchange student, Meredith Kercher, was found dead in her shared apartment. The morning light revealed horror inside the house on Via della Pergola. A door locked from the inside. A window broken. A pool of blood soaking the floor. Meredith's roommate, Amanda Knox, and Amanda's new boyfriend, Raffaele Sollecito, stood outside the building, calling police with trembling hands. Amanda's voice was sharp, frantic, almost rehearsed. Police arrived quickly, their boots echoing on the old stone stairs. They pushed open the door to Meredith's room, and stopped. It wasn't just the blood. It was the chaos. A lamp overturned. Clothing scattered. The room looked like there'd been a struggle, but not a robbery. Nothing valuable was missing. Meredith lay under a duvet, as if someone had tried to cover what they'd done. Outside, Amanda held herself tightly, whispering in Italian, "A terribile, a terribile." But something about her tone caught one officer's ear, not grief exactly. Something colder. As investigators cordoned off the scene, neighbors gathered at the gate. "The English girls," one murmured. "Always laughing, always loud." Another added, "But lately, there were fights." Meredith's friend soon arrived, crying and shaking, telling police she had been warm, grounded, and careful, the kind of girl who locked her doors. Amanda, on the other hand, was spontaneous, carefree. Some called her quirky. Others said wild. By noon, word had spread across the quiet Italian town. A British student murdered. The roommate questioned. The press arrived before the forensics team even finished marking evidence. Cameras flashed as Amanda, wearing jeans and a purple jacket, was escorted to the police station. She looked confused, but not broken. Inside the apartment, detectives began piecing together the story. There was no forced entry, except for one smashed window, but the shards of glass lay on top of the scattered clothes. Staged, perhaps? They found a bloody footprint in the hallway. DNA on a kitchen knife. And a strange mixture of blood and bleach in the bathroom sink, as if someone had tried to clean. When asked where she'd been, Amanda said she'd spent the night at Raffaele's apartment, watching movies, smoking, making love. Raffaele nodded in agreement. But when police pressed for details, their stories began to unravel. Amanda said they woke up late. Raffaele said they woke early. Amanda said they received a text from Meredith that night. Raffaele said there were no messages. Then came a slip. Amanda admitted she returned to the house that morning before police arrived. "The door was open," she said. "I thought Meredith had gone out. The blood in the bathroom. I thought it was from her period." Detectives exchanged glances. No emotion. No hesitation. Just calm explanation. Too calm. That afternoon, forensic technicians found something that would complicate everything. DNA from another man, not Raffaele, not Amanda, on Meredith's body. His name was Rudy Guide, a drifter from Ivory Coast who had played basketball with locals nearby. When police found him days later, he was hiding in Germany. He claimed he'd been at the house that night, with Meredith. He said they were close, but someone else entered, attacked her, and fled. Guide ran in fear, leaving his fingerprints behind. Amanda's parents arrived from Seattle as international headlines exploded. American girl in Italian murder mystery. Angel or killer. Sex, blood, and lies in Perugia. Amanda's behavior only fueled the frenzy. She kissed Raffaele outside the police station. She did cartwheels in the hallway during breaks in questioning. When officers asked her to describe Meredith's death, she spoke in riddles, saying she had flashes of memory. Maybe she was there, maybe not. At one point, under intense interrogation, Amanda named her boss, Patrick Lumumba, the owner of a local bar. "He did it," she whispered. "I heard Meredith scream." Police arrested Patrick within hours. But his alibi was airtight. Security footage placed him across town. When confronted, Amanda said she'd been confused, pressured, scared. "They made me say it." But the damage was done. The story had grown legs, sprinting through every news network in the world. The Foxy Knoxy nickname stuck, blending beauty, innocence, and suspicion into something the media devoured. In the small courtroom of Perugia, Amanda and Raffaele faced the first wave of formal questioning. The Italian prosecutor, Giuliano Mignini, watched them closely. He had a theory: this wasn't a break-in. It was something darker, a night of lust, jealousy, and rage that spiraled out of control. And then came the twist. A forensic analyst discovered a kitchen knife from Raffaele's apartment. On its blade, traces of Meredith's DNA. On the handle, Amanda's. A chill swept through the courtroom. Had they planned it? Had jealousy driven them to madness? Or was someone else setting the scene? As the sun dipped over the rooftops of Perugia, reporters camped outside the police station, their cameras waiting for one thing: Amanda Knox in handcuffs. By nightfall, it happened. Amanda and Raffaele were officially charged with the murder of Meredith Kercher. Their faces flashed across the world, the girl next door and her quiet boyfriend, now painted as cold-blooded killers. But deep in the police archives, one photograph still waited to be explained: a partial bloody footprint leading away from Meredith's room. Too small to belong to Rudy Guide. Too small to belong to Raffaele. And when investigators finally compared it, their hearts froze. It matched Amanda's exact size. But what if the print wasn't hers at all? Because the next morning, a new piece of evidence surfaced. One that would unravel everything they thought they knew. The small Italian courtroom buzzed with tension. Cameras flashed outside like lightning. Inside, Amanda Knox sat between her lawyers, hands trembling slightly but her eyes steady. Her boyfriend, Raffaele Sollecito, stared at the table, pale, withdrawn, his once smooth confidence replaced by unease. The world watched as the investigation unraveled, and the line between truth and illusion blurred. Detectives believed they had their suspects, their motive, even their weapon. But there were cracks in the case that wouldn't go away. The knife with Meredith's DNA? Too large to match the wounds precisely. The bloody footprint? Smudged, uncertain. The timeline? Shifting every time Amanda spoke. And yet her behavior, playful, detached, even smiling, seemed to condemn her more than any fingerprint could. Still, the question hung in the air: was she guilty, or just naive in the face of tragedy? In early December, prosecutors called a press conference. Cameras crowded the room as prosecutor Giuliano Mignini stood tall, speaking with conviction. "We believe this crime was not committed by one person," he declared. "It was a collective act, driven by sexual motive and power." The journalists scribbled like wildfire. The Foxy Knoxy myth grew teeth. She was no longer just the girl next door, she was the femme fatale. Meanwhile, Amanda sat in her cell, writing in her journal, page after page of confusion, fear, and strange dreams. "I keep seeing her face," she wrote. "I hear her scream, but I can't tell if it's real or my imagination." Her words leaked to the press, painted as confession. But to her supporters, they were the ramblings of a terrified young woman lost in translation. Back in Perugia, new forensics were being analyzed. The luminol tests lit up faint traces of blood, in the hallway, in Amanda's bedroom, and on the bath mat. But nothing was clear enough to be conclusive. Rudy Guide, arrested in Germany, had already been tried and convicted separately for his part in the crime. He claimed Amanda and Raffaele were there, that they did the rest. Yet his story changed every time he told it. Defense attorneys tore through the inconsistencies. Where was the murder weapon really found? Why were proper contamination procedures ignored? Why were tests done weeks after the evidence was collected? The deeper they dug, the messier it got. The once solid case began to look like a tangle of assumptions. But the courtroom didn't see uncertainty, it saw drama. And Amanda's every move fed the fire. When she entered court, she smiled. When she left, she waved to cameras. When asked about the night of the murder, she said, "I don't remember, it's like a dream." Reporters called her a manipulator. Psychologists called her a narcissist. Her supporters called her a scapegoat. And the truth? It was buried somewhere between the headlines and the evidence bag. In March 2009, after months of investigation, the trial officially began. The courthouse was overflowing, journalists shoulder to shoulder, cameras pressed to the glass. The prosecution painted a lurid picture, an argument that spiraled into violence, a game that turned deadly. They described Amanda as jealous of Meredith, her beauty, her friendships, her ease with people. Raffaele was cast as the quiet accomplice, a man under her influence. But when Amanda took the stand, her composure cracked. Tears streamed down her face as she said, "I did not kill my friend. I did not." Her voice echoed through the courtroom. Still, the jury's faces remained unreadable. Outside, the streets filled with whispers. The American girl is lying. No, she's being framed. The Italian police just want someone to blame. Meanwhile, new evidence appeared, a clasp from Meredith's bra that had been collected weeks late, contaminated, according to the defense, but reportedly containing Raffaele's DNA. It was all the prosecution needed to strengthen their case. On June 12, 2009, Amanda and Raffaele were found guilty of murder. Amanda, 26 years in prison. Raffaele, 25. The courtroom erupted. Reporters flooded out into the street, shouting into microphones. Knox found guilty. Justice for Meredith. Amanda's parents collapsed in disbelief. Her mother cried, "She's innocent. She's innocent." But no one was listening. Inside her cell that night, Amanda stared at the ceiling. The laughter, the lights, the madness, gone. Only silence. She whispered into the dark, "If I didn't do it, why does it feel like the world already decided I did?" Yet far away, in a quiet forensic lab in Rome, a scientist was reanalyzing the DNA samples. And what he found would soon change everything. The knife, the one piece of evidence linking Amanda to Meredith, had almost no DNA at all. In fact, the trace was so small it could have come from contamination. The bra clasp? Mishandled, stored improperly, passed between multiple people. Doubt began to crawl back into the headlines. By 2011, new tests ordered by an appeals court revealed something shocking. The forensic evidence used to convict Amanda and Raffaele was deeply flawed. Reporters flipped the narrative overnight. From murderer to victim. New forensics may free Amanda Knox. The same media that once condemned her now painted her as wrongfully accused. When the retrial began, Amanda appeared thinner, older, hardened by prison. But her tone was sharp now, precise. "I was portrayed as a monster," she said. "But I was a scared girl in a foreign country. I lost my friend, and then I lost my life." The courtroom fell silent. As the evidence crumbled, so did the prosecution's case. There were no witnesses placing Amanda inside Meredith's room. No physical link that stood up to scrutiny. And finally, on October 3, 2011, 4 years after Meredith's death, Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito were acquitted. Amanda burst into tears, clutching her lawyer as the verdict was read. The crowd outside screamed, cameras flashing like a storm. But the story wasn't over. Because years later, in 2015, Italy's highest court would make a final decision, and reveal something no one expected about the handling of the entire case. The truth about what really happened that night in Perugia was about to take its final haunting turn. When Amanda Knox walked out of the Capan prison in 2011, She was met by flashing cameras, tears, and disbelief. Her face, once a global symbol of guilt, was now the image of redemption. But behind the relief, there was something darker, the knowledge that justice, in this case, had become a battlefield. In the streets of Perugia, some celebrated her release. Others spat the word vergogna, shame. To them, the verdict was an insult to Meredith's memory. And for the Kercher family, there was no closure, only confusion. "We just want the truth," Meredith's mother whispered to reporters. "Whoever did this to our daughter, we just want to know why." Amanda returned home to Seattle, where she was met by cheering crowds and a media frenzy. But freedom didn't feel free. She was haunted by flashbacks, the echo of cell doors, the sterile smell of the interrogation room, the cold eyes of prosecutors. Every time she looked at her reflection, she saw two versions of herself: the innocent student she had been, and the accused murderer the world believed her to be. Across the ocean, Italian prosecutors were far from finished. Giuliano Magnini announced his intention to appeal the acquittal. "This case is not over," he said firmly. "Justice must be served." The nightmare wasn't ending. It was starting all over again. By 2013, the Italian Supreme Court had overturned the acquittal, ordering a new trial. Amanda, now living back in the United States, refused to return to Italy. The trial proceeded in absentia. Once again, the headlines screamed her name. Knox faces retrial. Could she go back to prison? And once again, the same evidence, old, discredited yet still haunting, was paraded through the courtroom. Amanda's defense team fought fiercely. "There is no evidence," they argued. "Only a story." But stories can be powerful, and in Italy, hers had become legend. Meanwhile, Rudy Guide remained behind bars, his conviction confirmed. He admitted to being in the house that night, but insisted he didn't kill Meredith. His DNA was found at the scene, but the question of whether he acted alone or with others lingered. The public was divided. Some believed Guide's version, others thought he was lying to protect himself. In 2014, the retrial concluded with a shocking twist. Amanda and Raffaele were found guilty once again. The courtroom gasped. The pendulum had swung back. Amanda, in Seattle, heard the news over the phone. Her body went numb. "How many times," she whispered, "do I have to be tried for the same thing?" The sentence, 28.5 years in prison. But she refused to return. And this time, international law was on her side. In March 2015, Italy's highest court, the Corte Suprema di Cassazione, reviewed the case one final time. The judges examined every piece of evidence, every statement, every forensic test. They saw contamination, bias, and procedural failures. The deeper they looked, the clearer it became. This case had been poisoned from the start. And then, on March 27, 2015, the court delivered its final verdict. Amanda Knox and Raffaele Sollecito were fully acquitted. The ruling was scathing. The investigation was deemed a tragic failure of justice. The courtroom fell silent. Outside, the press waited, cameras rolling. "After 8 years of hell," Amanda said through tears, "I finally have my life back. But Meredith, she never will." Yet even with the case closed, the truth remained blurred. Who killed Meredith Kercher? The court said it was Rudy Guide, and only him. But to this day, questions persist. Why did his story change? Why did the evidence suggest multiple people might have been there? And what about the bizarre police interrogations, the missing recordings, the media's obsession with Amanda's personality instead of the facts? In the end, no one could answer those questions. Not the police, not the courts, not even Amanda herself. The world had watched a murder investigation turn into a global circus, where headlines mattered more than justice, and perception mattered more than truth. Years later, Amanda rebuilt her life. She became a journalist, an author, an advocate for the wrongfully accused. Her voice, once drowned out by the noise, became powerful again. She stood on stages, looked into cameras, and told her story, not as a suspect, but as a survivor. "I know what it feels like," she said, "to have the whole world believe you're something you're not." Meanwhile, the Kerchers still mourned in silence. Meredith was buried in her hometown in England, her grave marked with a single inscription: "She will always be loved." As the years passed, the case became a symbol of media sensationalism, of flawed justice, of how one tragedy can destroy multiple lives. And somewhere in Perugia, that quiet hillside house still stands, shuttered, empty, but not forgotten. Locals say when you pass by at night, you can still feel it, the weight of questions that were never truly answered. The murder of Meredith Kercher remains one of the most debated criminal cases in modern history. Was justice served? Or was it lost in translation? Maybe the truth lies somewhere in between, trapped in the silence that followed the headlines. They thought the case was closed. But the world still wonders, what really happened that night in Perugia? If you thought this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe, because the next case will chill you even deeper.